Alright, today we're at the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. This is definitely one of the most sought after and visited attractions in all of St. Augustine. It's got to be the most recognizable. People come from all over the country to climb its 219 steps to the top to get a view that is like nothing else in the city. We were lucky enough today to get a tour of the museum from Gail Ballard, who is the director of the Interpretive Division. We also have a great interview coming up with Chuck Mead, who is the head underwater archaeologist. And that was the big reason I wanted to come out today, is this museum has an incredible, second to none underwater archaeology program. Let's go check it out. One of the most interesting things people learn on the tour of the lighthouse is that it is not actually the first lighthouse in St. Augustine. The first lighthouse was here. This is actually the foundation and all that remains. It is about 300 meters closer to the water. The ground here is less stable and it eventually crumbled and started to sink. If you want to check out the original site, head across the street to the St. Augustine Yacht Club, park, head toward the long dock and walk along the water and you'll find it. Okay, so when you come to the lighthouse and museum, definitely check out the nature trail, which is where I am now. We get to see a lot of the coastal hammock vegetation, and wildlife might be in the area. Keep an eye out for pygmy rattlesnakes, and also watch your footing like I'm trying to right now. There's a lot of vines and roots that you can trip on, but definitely it's beautiful back here. Animal tracks. Those look like raccoon. So you can take a trail up that way through the woods. You can also go this way. They all seem to intertwine. And you won't get too lost. You'll find your way back eventually.
This is Dorothy back here. What are you working on, Dorothy?
I am working on a access database.
Okay, so there's a lot of data entry, as you can imagine, cataloging and inventorying.
So today I'm here at the lighthouse in St. Augustine with Chuck Mead, and Chuck is one of the archaeologists here, is that correct?
Right, I'm the head archaeologist, so I'm the director of our research program, which is called LAMP, or Lighthouse Archaeological Maritime Program.
Now, how long have you been working here?
So I've been here about 15 years.
Okay.
I've been an archaeologist for quite a long time, for almost 30 years, and this is a wonderful place to be an archaeologist. If you're into shipwrecks, if you're into maritime history, this is the place for it. We have had, as everyone knows, 450 years of history here in St. Augustine. We're the oldest port in the entire country, and so we've had ships wrecking for all those 4.5 centuries, and an awful lot of them. So we had one visitor to St. Augustine in 1784 who wrote in his memoirs that every 2 weeks to a month at the most, there's another shipwrecked in St. Augustine. Wow. And you can't walk 100 paces on the beach without coming across the old wooden bones of a shipwreck. So there's a lot of them here.
So how do you guys know where to go? There's a lot of water out there, obviously.
Yeah. So we do use old maps, but we don't have maps that have like an X on the spot that tells us where to go. But we can use old maps so that we understand what the maritime landscape looked like. So we can see the shape of the Anastasia Island and where the inlet was and where the sandbars were. And of course they moved around a lot, so the more maps we have back through time, the better understanding we have of how that changes over time. And at that point, we pick our search areas and we go out with some pretty high-tech equipment, and so that's how we find shipwrecks. So we have a magnetometer, that's essentially a metal detector that you tow behind the boat. It lets you know if there's iron or steel. So if you have a wreck with a bunch of cannons on it, that thing, it'll light up like a Christmas tree. So that lets you know. We have sonar that gives us imagery of what the bottom looks like. So we have different tools, and we basically pick an area that we think is likely to find a shipwreck. Then we have a good understanding of where possible targets are, and then we go in diving and dive on those targets, and we may have to probe beneath the sand, but that's how we have discovered a number of shipwrecks here off St. Augustine. But if we get the equipment working and we use it right, and we've done our homework with old maps, then we can target some of these wrecks and we can find them.
Okay, and about how deep are these usually?
A lot of people think the Titanic, that's miles down. There are certainly ships that founder deep at sea, and they're in deep water, but most shipwrecks around the world, believe it or not, are in shallow water. And the reason is because they run aground. That's what the biggest danger to any ship is, running aground. And when you are a ship out at sea, but you have a cargo that is coming to St. Augustine, or you have passengers that are coming here, you have to go from the open ocean through an inlet. So you kind of have to thread the needle between sandbars to get into the safety of our harbor, and that's what's dangerous, is the inlet. Every time a storm comes through, it moves the sandbars around. I mean, it happens still today. We have a new inlet down at Summerhaven that didn't used to be there before a hurricane made it. know, so the landscape changes, and that's why there were so many shipwrecks. Most of our wrecks are in, believe it or not, like, you know, 17 feet to maybe 30 feet. Okay. If you look at a map of all our wrecks, they're all clustered around where the inlet used to be. We have one lone wreck from the 1700s that we don't know what the heck it was thinking, but it was off about a mile away from where all the other ones are. We do have some wrecks that are in deeper water. There, you know, there's the Gulf of America, which was sunk by a U-boat in World War II. That's in probably 70 feet of water off Jacksonville Beach. Most of our wrecks, and certainly all of our historic wrecks, are in quite shallow water.
Okay. And then I guess last question is a twofer. So what's the most favorite item that you've discovered personally? And also what's the most historic one that in your opinion, that the collective has here?
Oh, that's a good question too. There's so many different ways to answer that question. You know, one of the most exciting finds I've ever made in my entire career was a bronze cannon. This was in Texas before I worked here at the lighthouse. It was on the French explorer La Salle's ship that wrecked in 1686. Oh, wow. And I was one of the first divers in the water, and that was the first artifact we found, and it just nailed the wreck. It identified it for us. It had the King's crest, the Admiral of France's crest. It had the right dates. It even had a serial number that eventually linked up to that specific shipwreck. So that was a great find. Kind of a find of a lifetime. Here in St. Augustine, we've had some really cool stuff. I love things that give you personal insight into what an individual's life might have been like back in the colonial period or hundreds of years before. This one was embedded in a concretion, so when we found it, it was just this blob of kind of looked like rock, you know. And when we x-rayed it, we could see there was a disc of metal inside, and it had some kind of lettering or numbering around the edge of the disc. When we cleaned it, it was quite small, so it was only about this big around, and it had Roman numerals 1 through 12, like it was the face of a clock. Okay. And it even had hands, like clock hands, but they were cast into the pewter. It was a pewter disc. Okay. So they weren't working like they weren't moving parts. So this clock could never tell, you know, it
was right twice a day.
It couldn't move. Yeah, it was right twice a day. That's it. And so we were like, well, what the heck is this? And like, maybe this is like part of the cover of a pocket watch or something. Yeah. And we did more research, and we realized it was a thing in the 1700s to have a fake watch. So if you couldn't afford a pocket watch, you could still have this fake watch and trick your friends and estimate what time it was, and none of the watches were that accurate anyway. So again, just a little bit of insight into what it was like to be a you know, upwardly mobile, aspiring figure in the 1700s. So those little tidbits of history are just fantastic, and shipwrecks really can be time capsules for an archaeologist, full of those historical tidbits that just help paint a picture of what the world was like a few hundred years ago. All right. Well, thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate your time today. Well, it was really good talking with you. Happy to do it. Thanks. Okay, so if you're looking for a unique and one-of-a-kind experience in St. Augustine, or heck, anywhere in North Florida, check out the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. You're not going to regret it. It is, the view from the top is definitely worth climbing those steps, and you're going to learn a ton while you're here. It's a lot of fun. It's a great experience. A special thanks to Gail Ballard and Chuck Mead for giving us so much of their time today, providing an incredible tour, and giving us a stupendous interview. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. If you like this video and you want to see more content like this, go hit that thumbs up button and hit subscribe. Please share with your friends. Until next time, keep having adventures.